you want him to just stand here? Is that okay? Or?
If we can hear you, Mr. McIver, from right there, that's great. If it's hard for the court reporter to hear you, we'll get you over to the podium. But let's try it right there, please.
Well, given these shackles, if you don't mind, I would like to sit.
That's okay.
Thank you. The limited time I have here today, I'd like to use notes if that's possible. I find that without notes, I'm more emotional and more broken up, so there might be more cogent for you. I would like to use those, and for really two different purposes. One is that I've received a tremendous amount of mail challenging our system and asking why I am not a champion of some challenge of that system. I'd like to just very briefly describe, if I'm ever allowed to respond, how I would do so. And then I want to close by thanking those who've been great supporters of mine. And I'll do that in the most efficient way. The outpouring of support has been beyond anything that any of us expected. A month ago this trial occurred, and last week on one given day I received 11 different pieces of mail. And yesterday I received 11 different pieces of mail from from individuals on 3 different continents. One I would like to point out is, because it seems to be fairly common, it's a lady from Ireland. Her name is Deidre Kinney from Dublin, Ireland. And she says, "Dear Mr. McIver, you do not know me, but I watched your trial online and I wanted to write to offer you my support. The injustice done to you is shocking. Your sister gave me your address. Know that a lot of people see through these lies. Thank you." For some reason, that seems to be the outpouring that I'm finding. And I would like to at least refer to a couple of people who are offshore that have been so faithful in supporting me. Of course, this lady, then there's Maria Schneider that sends me recipes. If she knew anything about the quality of food in jail, she'd never do that because it's more punishing than it is helping. But again, she's very supportive in that respect. Then there is the most unique individual I think I've ever corresponded with. His name is Trent Jones. He's a racehorse jockey in Perth, Australia. And his girlfriend was killed in a very tragic accident. He saw the trial, decided to begin corresponding with me, and he's been very helpful as we have jointly through correspondence for more. But what is unique about him is that his favorite racehorse, Hobart, has been retired just this year, and that now he and Hobart are free to step into the surf in Perth and play as they were unable to do when Hobart was running. They always asked that I pass that along to others as well. In addition to those that I have never met, I have a list that I won't bore the court with of about 60 individuals locally that have been very helpful to me in terms of their support. Neighbors bringing me food while I was in house arrest, friends delivering Chick-Fil-A, one of my huge, huge favorites, one of the things I miss the most, I guess, about the food in jail. But they've been remarkably kind to me. Even non-lawyers are offering to write amicus briefs, which I find to be a little bit astounding. But I trust they'd be usually influential with you with that respect. But nonetheless, those people are very, very important to me, and all of that is heartfelt, especially, and I'm sure a number of those people in the room today. Also, second to last would be my family, both blood and extended. Grandchildren who send me drawings with me as the hero in a picture story they've drawn, hoping to see me soon. Some are in California, which is a long way, but we don't get together near enough. Then I'm the proud godfather of approximately 23 children, as best I've been able to reconstruct and remember, not the least of whom is Austin, that we've heard something about. Austin and Diane and I, he was permanent part of our relationship. We were there, we held him when he was born. When his mother became ill, we took him and did all the 4 o'clock feedings and so on, and did some very serious bonding with him at the time. There's some small amount of influence from Diane and myself. He today is still a straight A student. He's an all-star on his basketball and baseball leagues. His first all-star baseball game is on Saturday, and he asked if anybody in the office would like to attend. He'd be happy to have him come. He's the only left-handed pitcher on the team. And he's a huge fan of the Golden State Warriors, and he said, if anything, I had to say go Warriors before this statement was over with. I'm not sure how I'm going to accommodate missing him as much as I do, because he was such an integral part of our relationship. And then finally, under family, would be Tammy Johnson, who's the lady that's coordinated for us and helped me get through the changes that I'm going to have to make in my life. Extremely valuable person. And then we've heard about my sister. And to correct Amanda just mildly, I don't think Dixie, my sister, missed a day of trial. She's from Texas. She leads a very active and busy life there. She tore that life apart, came here to assist me in lots of ways. She's been here for the last week, helping with some other things involving my estate, to the extent that I die in prison, and helps constantly. She's filled with unfettered love, and I'd like to proclaim, as I've done many times before, she is America's last living saint. And I would hope that others would appreciate her for that. Last, I want to thank what I refer to, and many people in this room have heard me refer to as my Diane. I found it very painful to hear her described in the trial in some ways that I simply didn't know who that person was. Clearly, as the president of an organization at the office, I'm sure it's necessary, because I was the leader in my firm, that you need to be firm, you need to be difficult sometimes, you need to be ardent, but that wasn't my Diane. The luckiest day of my life was when Diane chose me. And in doing so, we started a relationship that was can only be described as amazing. We loved each other like small children, unabashedly devoted to each other, and so on. What many people could not possibly know, because it's never been revealed, and I'm going to give up the secret today, we felt so strongly about each other, we were together so much. Now, we actually had a secret among us, and that was that we would be different places, we'd look at each other, and we would say, sometimes even in unison, is this truly real? Is this real? And it was one of those, if it's not real, don't pinch me, because this is the greatest dream I've ever had and I don't want to wake up. But is this real? And we, for example, would go to the Christmas dinner, the annual Christmas dinner hosted by Kathy and Ken Rickard. We'd be in their home, they'd retire to the kitchen to prepare the meal and to serve it to us, and we look at each other and almost repeat in unison, is this truly real? We just couldn't believe it was that good. And we found that that was the case in so many instances. In fact, it became, if people are able to believe it, telepathic. I could be on the other side of a room in an event, or I could be busy in our cow pasture, and my conscience would hear these words, is this truly real? I would spin around, look to where she was, see her gaze, and know that she had telepathically communicated those words to me. Is this truly real? And that I found to be so very moving in that respect. At any rate, I have to tell you, I even confounded the preacher that married us. He was a 30-year client and friend. And as he's delivering his words in the marriage, I look at her and say, and and mumbled, "Is this truly real?" After the ceremony, he said to me, "Were you questioning the authenticity of the ceremony that I was providing?" And so on. It was like that. And she was like a little girl growing up in Alabama with a new pink dress, looking to just show it off and please people. That was my Diane. My Diane was very different from those described. And I, of course, will miss her so. There just aren't words to describe the nature of our relationship, the energy we derive from each other, and so on. And on the guidance of counsel, I'll not go further down that road, because I don't want to impinge upon their ability to obviously have a good exchange in terms of my appeal. Yes, it is true, and many people, some of whom have spoken, have seen that she delivered to me what she called adjustments. I call them corrections. But from time to time, she would become frustrated with me, as I think all women do with their relationships. And why is that? It's my belief that guys are just generally dumb when it comes to maintaining and nurturing quality relationships. We just genetically don't have a feel for what's the right thing to do for a relationship. And in that respect, those corrections delivered by her, sometimes in front of others, were of the type that they were always delivered with love. They fostered our dream, and for that very reason, I always accepted them with love, because they were important to me in that respect. But in my view, and I don't have any memory of us ever crossing bad words among us. I would receive and receive the corrections and go forward. I don't ever remember a time I was critical of her in that respect. Just that was the nature of our devotion to each other. Since this tragedy, I have spent 263 nights in a jail cell by myself, but not alone. She has joined me there. It's a presence. It's hard to describe, but she has left her earth suit, and after the three different ceremonies we had for her, two in Atlanta for Celebration of Life and one in Texas for Celebration of Life, where we tried to say goodbye to her, she never said goodbye to me, and she's been there. It's as if she's on the other side of a curtain or in another dimension. It really is true that if you're that close to each other, and this is obviously my first experience with it, that they are there. They are absolutely there, and I've never felt alone in that respect. It has meant so much to me in that way. On this earth, she was my life and made me complete. I'm certainly not that way now. But if I might just say to her directly, because I know she's here, I feel her presence as I speak these words. Darling, you have brought me more joy and fulfillment than few men on this earth have ever known. Thank you until we are together again, because it is truly real. It is truly real. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIver.
Ms. Clark Palmer, anything else?
We don't have anything else.
Okay.
So,
as Mr. Rucker observed at the beginning, this was a long trial. It lasted many weeks. I didn't know it was that many witnesses. It felt like more, but that's still a big number. As Mr. Corey observed, we had a jury that listened and watched and paid attention to what was presented by both sides over these many weeks. And there was a presentation, a robust presentation from both sides. And this jury, along with the attorneys and Mr. McIver, and perhaps Mr. McIver's sister, really the only people, with all due respect to Ireland and Australia, etc., who absorbed all of the evidence that was presented in this case. It's helpful to have the armchair jurists who, after the fact, say this is how it should have played out or that. It was a miscarriage of justice, or it was the right answer, or this or that. What the jury said in the end was that it was not an accident. The jury concluded that you, Mr. McIver, intentionally pulled the trigger of that firearm, not with the intent to kill your wife and the family matriarch for Corey Enterprises, but that you intentionally pulled the trigger. And they delivered a verdict that supported that conclusion. I do believe, consistent with what Ms. Clark Palmer said, that if you in fact love Diane McIver as much as you've just shared with me, and others have shared with me through the letters and what we heard at trial, then there really isn't a form of punishment that any judge could impose that would be more severe than the burden of knowing that you took Diane McIver from all of us. I didn't know her before the trial. I feel like I know more about her, but it's clear in listening to Mr. Corey and Mr. Grover and Ms. Williams and Ms. Carter and others who testified during the trial that she was family to those people. As we mean that term, not a blood relative, but just as much as a blood relative. And you took Diane McIver from all of them as well. Their loss in many ways is the same. I'll tell you what's most telling. You had as much time as you wanted to share with me what you thought was important for me to hear, and I guess your audience to hear. We heard about racehorses in Australia, and Chick-Fil-A, and telepathy, a brief psychoanalysis of the male ego and ghosts. I didn't ever hear you say you're sorry for what you did. To me, that silence speaks volumes. Mr. McIver, the sentencing options are largely determined by the legislature in this case. The penalty for felony murder is life. I'm going to sentence you, count 2, to a term of life with the possibility of parole. Count 3 merges into count 2. Count 4 must run consecutive to count 2. It must be 5 years. I will suspend those 5 years. Count 5 is a range of 1 to 5. Excuse me. I will sentence you to 5 years to serve. That will run concurrently with count 2. The sentence I just intended to pronounce is a sentence of life plus 5 with those 5 years suspended.